And no, it's awful. The Drake Bell shit is that's crazy to hear. That is, man. Guys, we can't joke like this. Jesus, guys, we're sometimes humor helps us move through things.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
And a lot of people were just horrified about how they were responding. The likes of Alexa Nicholas, who was an actor on Zoe 101 and a source in the doc, saying, really sad and disturbing to see some other Nick stars joking around and cracking jokes around child sexual abuse on TikTok. With also Drake Bell responding, saying, Ned's declassless. This is wild. Laugh it up, guys. Laugh it up. Give me your holes? Really? And that's not where the fallout ended, because The Hollywood Reporter just published a sit-down interview with Dan Schneider about the documentary, where he was interviewed by Boogie, who had a role in iCarly, and he notably did appear on Dan's side. Like, he wanted to help clear his name, so it was very much all in Dan's court. But he did address some claims, and regarding anyone who had a negative experience on his set, he said,
I would snap at people sometimes. I would be snarky when I could have given them a nicer answer. I would not give people the time that they needed. I would be in too big a hurry to get on to the next thing I had to do. And watching that show, it made me, there were so many times I wanted to pick up a phone and call some of those people and say, I'm so sorry, and let's talk about it. And I wish you'd had a better time, and I wish I could have shown you a better experience.
He also discussed Drake Bell revealing that he was a sexual assault victim, and to that, Dan said,
and he told me what had happened. I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need?
But there was also some denials and distancing himself from a variety of issues, saying there were adults and parents present on set that could have spoken up if they found jokes to be inappropriate, with him saying he didn't have as much control. But with all this, we're still seeing everything play out online. And so in the meantime, I gotta ask you, what are your thoughts on the allegations in this documentary, the reaction, the backlash, any and all things? And then, this is the dumbest, craziest news I've seen in a bit. And it starts with the question of how much would I have to pay you to chop off your own legs? And I ask because for this young guy in Taiwan that we're talking about today, it was $1.3 million. Right? He goes by the name Zhang, and in high school, he befriended possibly the worst person imaginable. His name's Liao. So this story happens after graduation when they're both 23 years old. But apparently, they reconnect, and Liao has some bad news, saying that gangsters are coming for him, and Zhang believes him. But with this, Liao's like, don't worry though, I got a plan. And so the first thing they do is they buy several expensive policies for life insurance, travel insurance, and accident insurance. And then, just days later, because, that is not suspicious at all, they ride around on a motorbike at night, allegedly to lend some credibility to the alibi that Zhang got frostbite from the cold air. This notably, even though the temperature that night never dipped below 42 degrees Fahrenheit. But eventually, they get home, and that is when the insane part of this story fully begins. Because Liao allegedly restrained Zhang to a chair using cable ties, with him then submerging his friend's feet into a plastic bucket filled with dry ice. And there he sits from 2 a.m. until afternoon, enduring this pain for over 10 hours. So by the end of it, he removes his legs, or I guess what used to be his legs, out of this bucket, and they're necrotic, they're swollen, they're a frostbitten nightmare. But of course, that is exactly what they were hoping for, with them then rushing over to the emergency room as if they just simply lost track of time riding on their motorbike. And this is gonna shock you. Immediately, the doctors are like, none of this makes sense. You are the most suspicious bastards on the planet. Right, first of all, we're in Taiwan, a subtropical country. You do not get frostbite here. Second, his legs show no shoe or sock marks. And third, his injuries appear oddly symmetrical, almost as if he, I don't know, this is crazy, left his feet in a bucket full of dry ice. And so they report the case to the authorities, but also they still have to amputate his legs below the knees, right? Because he genuinely needed it. Except, that big insurance payout that he and his friends were hoping for, it never pops up. Because unfortunately for these geniuses, when the police searched their place, they found the plastic bucket, insurance documents, a white polystyrene box for dry ice, 8 mobile phones, and a tablet computer. Also, remember those gangsters going after Liao? Allegedly, that's not even true. He just lost money trading crypto. But apparently it was an effective lie, because he was able to convince Zhang into signing a legal note obligating him to pay out $800,000 after he got the insurance payout. Though of course they didn't get that money because fraud. And as is often the case, the main point of this story is don't be stupid. And then King Charles is dead. Except he's actually not. He is alive. But for a second, you maybe believe me, because a lot of people have been convinced that might be the case. Right? Especially because over the last month or so, the royal family has lost absolute control over narratives and rumors surrounding them. There's mass speculation about Kate Middleton's whereabouts in hell, and that has just kind of extended onto Charles, people being convinced that some kind of news or update is incoming. Because Charles was was recently diagnosed with cancer, people assumed that the update was that he was dead or dying. But it turns out, at least for now, he's kicking it. With outlets like Forbes noting that any claim that BBC is holding on to some major announcement about the family is unconfirmed. But notably, the fire was still fueled after there was a fake Russian report claiming Charles was dead. With that rumor getting shared on major Telegram channels, including one used by a respected Russian newspaper. The rumor also made its way to a pro-Kremlin channel where there was a document made in a similar style to the one announcing Queen Elizabeth's death. This one simply saying the king passed away unexpectedly yesterday afternoon. And that claim just made the rounds until the channel sharing it edited their post to note that the claim was not confirmed by official sources. So at that point, the news had already gone viral. So you had to have the UK's embassy in Ukraine later releasing a statement debunking it and saying the news about the death of King Charles III is fake. Buckingham Palace also shutting it down by giving the press a statement saying that Charles is continuing with official and private business. And I'm just going to assume they mean not from beyond the grave. But then also, for further confirmation, they shared a photo of him meeting Korean War veterans at Buckingham Palace this morning. But even just the fact that any of these hoaxes claiming that he was dead got so big in the first place just shows how much control the royals have lost. That the family has completely lost control over their PR and that they have fumbled at every turn to get here. Because you got people still waiting to learn what the hell's going on with Kate Middleton. She's been MIA, family saying she's had surgery, internet not believing that, won't believe that. There's been weeks of speculation, people just saying things like, oh, she got stabbed, she's dead, she's divorced, she's getting a BBL, she's with Pete Davidson now. You know what? With Pete's track record, there's a non-zero chance that's true. But then with all this, we saw yesterday TMZ sharing a video of her and William leaving a farm shop. With that video apparently being taken over the weekend. While that seemed to be enough for some, not for the whole internet. Because the internet just went into conspiracy overdrive. There are people saying that's not her, that's her stand-in. There are people saying the video's too low quality, they want an up-close 4K moving video that Middleton did in Photoshop. And even then, with the state of AI these days, could you trust it? And I'm just left kind of wondering, is there anything that can be done to put the genie back in the bottle? Because they have mishandled this at so many turns that there's just really not that much good faith there. Because there is a chance that the reality of this situation are some of the most boring truths imaginable, but they've handled things where they've just let people's imaginations run wild and given them reason to let them run wild. Like, once again, I am not interested in the royal family. I think it's all just nothing. Unnecessary, over-romanticized pageantry. But with this, I still gotta say, there may not be a fire, but you can't just, like, attack anyone for thinking that there is a fire when apparently someone in your fucking house left the smoke machines on. Does that land? I don't know. And then...
What would you do with $1 billion? What would you do with $1 billion? What would you do with $1 billion? Would you give it to Trump? Please. And by please, I mean you motherfuckers.
That is essentially what a definite sane person, Mark Levin, tweeted yesterday, saying, why are there no Republican multi-billionaires offering to lend President Trump the funds to file his appeal in the outrageous case in New York State? Are none of them liquid enough to help or join with others to help? This is an outrage. Because if you don't know the details right now, Trump's in a little bit of trouble. Because among other things right now, he could have his assets and real estate property seized in a matter of days. With Trump's lawyers yesterday saying they can't get any company to pay the $454 million bond in a civil fraud case in New York while he appeals his judgment, which notably was brought against him by the judge overseeing the case after finding that Trump had defrauded banks for years by falsely inflating the value of his real estate assets to get favorable loans and other benefits. And so in their legal filing, Trump's lawyer said that securing the full bond was a practical impossibility, noting that they approached 30 different companies that provide bond deals and all of them refused. Right? Because in order to get that bond, the company that would provide it would basically have to agree to pay that massive penalty if Trump lost his appeal and was forced to cough up. So in exchange, he has to put up over $550 million in cash and other liquid assets as collateral, as well as paying a fee that could be as much as $20 million. But apparently, Trump doesn't have enough liquidity, especially because he just finalized another $91.6 million bond in the defamation case he lost to E. Jean Carroll. Right, so with this, we know that most of his money is in real estate holdings, which bond companies usually won't accept as collateral. And that appears to especially be true here because literally the whole reason Trump owes money in the first place is because he fraudulently overvalued his real estate assets. So you've got people asking why the fuck would anyone actually agree to take those real estate assets as collateral? Right, so with this, Trump's lawyers are asking an appeals court to pause the collection of the $454 million judgment while he appeals, with them also preemptively asking to appeal to the state's highest court if the lower level appellate doesn't rule in his favor there. But it's also unclear when that lower court would make a ruling here, and more specifically, whether it would make a ruling before this coming Monday, because that is the end of the 30-day grace period that New York's Attorney General gave him to come up with the bond money. And also with that, it's unclear if the AG will give Trump extra time when that deadline hits. Right, technically, she could have started seizing his assets as soon as the judgment came down, but she decided to give him that extra time. Now, a big thing here is even if the lower appeals court strikes down Trump's request, he still has some other options. Right, in addition to preemptively asking to appeal to the state's highest court, he could also move to quickly sell off a big asset or try and get help from a super rich supporter. Right, hence the Mark Levin plea. You know, all of this is coming as Trump's scrambling to raise money, especially after the E. Jean Carroll ruling dried up key reserves. Reportedly, his campaign's also currently facing some major funding shortfalls, with the PAC that's been funding his legal fees set to run out by this summer if the current rate of spending holds. Meanwhile, his legal bills continue to mount as the 4 criminal trials he faces inch closer and closer. And this desperation for money could also explain why we got the news yesterday that Trump is suing ABC News and George Stephanopoulos for defamation, claiming that the host repeatedly said that Trump had been found liable for raping E. Jean Carroll when the jury had actually found him liable for sexually abusing her. Though notably here, the judge in that case did explicitly clarify that because New York has such a narrow definition of rape, the jury's findings didn't mean that Carroll, quote, failed to prove that Mr. Trump raped her as many people commonly understand the word rape. But that is where we are right now. We're gonna have to wait to see what happens. Will A or several billionaires come out of the woodwork and do something here, or whether as some sort of fealty test or as a way to try to own a possible president?